That's her stuff.
We got Wi-Fi today. She wants to do that without comments, so hold your comments until after she's done. And then we move to a regular meeting after the budget hearing, after the comments are done. So there we go. Yeah, all yours.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Do I need to use microphone? Can you hear me up there?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry?
Zoom might want a microphone.
Okay, but they're on here. Right, that's the question.
Okay,
They're on Zoom.
so I'll go on the
Did you get
speaker.
the handout? Did you want to share that with us?
Oh, yeah. Well, I can do it, but sure. I'm sorry.
Okay, so while we're getting situated up front, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Beth Beerward. I am the business administrator for the Croydon Village School. I would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight for this petition budget hearing. What we're going to do this evening is we're going to review the PowerPoint that was actually at the district meeting for the $1,705,496. This budget can't be altered tonight. There can be comments, there can be questions to the board, but there wouldn't be any action taken on this budget tonight. So the $1,705,496 is the budget for this evening. So on the opening slide, you can see the members of the Croydon School Board and the members of the administration. This evening we have Jody Underwood here, the board chair. Tom has stepped off. We have Kevin on the board this evening, and Aaron. Also, Frank Brody, our superintendent of schools, is out of the country right now, but will be back for next week's meetings. Myself and Nicole Lackey, the associate principal, up in the front right-hand side of the room. This budget was presented at a public hearing on January 20th at Big White. We had about 10 members of the public present to give the board feedback on the original budget. This budget is $1,023 higher than the budget presented at the budget hearing and was adopted by the school board for inclusion for this year's district meeting, which was held on March 12th. All right, so let's let the slideshow go. The enrollment at the Croydon Village School as of October 1st, 21 is 24 students, 4 in kindergarten, 2 in first, 3 in second, 9 in third, and 6 in fourth. We also have 53 students that are in choice school situations in grades 5 through 12. Choice schools this year that we are sending students to include Claremont High School, Newport Middle and High School, Sunapee Middle and High School, Mount Royal, and Montessori. We also have students at Kimball Union. No students this year at Lebanon High School or Hanover. You can see the graphic of how many students are in each grade in the out-of-district, totaling 43. 10 students in 5th grade, 5 students in 6th grade, 6 students in 7th grade, 7 students in 8th grade, 8 students in 9th grade, 5 students in 10th grade, 8 students in 11th grade, and 4 students in 12th grade. The Croydon Village School does utilize federal grants to support the local budget. Those funds come through the state of New Hampshire from the federal government. They include ESSER funds, Title II, Title IV, Title V, IDEA, which is special education, and rural education grant. Then we presented a little bit of information about how those funds were being spent. Certainly all the COVID pandemic expenses that the district had came out of the CARES and ESSER grants, not the local budget. This year we've added an academic tutor through Title I to complete assessments and determine any learning gaps that students have through the COVID pandemic. We purchased snowshoes for all of our students and staff to support our winter program. through the Title IV grant. Our staff have been trained in responsive classroom training through Title II, which focuses on teacher improvement. There have been additional supports for our music program with the purchase of instruments to enhance current curriculum offerings. And we have continued professional development for our associate principal, who is currently working towards her principal certification. Future planning through the ESSER grant includes working on the HVAC system in both the red and the white building. Currently, we do have a narrative into the ESSER 3 grant for approval. We had a state inspection back in October, and this is an area that the school needs to upgrade. And we continue to leverage our federal funds to meet the needs that are not directly addressed in the general operating budget. This slide just depicts some of the major increases and decreases in the proposed $1,705,496 budget. You can see the changes to the right, regular instruction, special education. You can see some increases in those categories. Principal's office. We are continuing to carry 2 individuals in the principal's line item, our associate principal and also a certified principal. That expense will go away next year once our associate principal becomes certified. Information services, we added the ALMA student information system last year, which tracks all student information and demographics, and is a link to the state reporting that is required for public education for our public schools. Building operation, we have added a facilities director to enhance both of our buildings and meet the requirements for safety in both the red and the white building. Excuse me. And SA Transportation Services, that is the current contract with Butler Bus that is up for renewal this year. It is a 2% increase over prior year. And SAU services of $978. Employment benefits are down $21,731, and that is primarily because of a shift in employees. We had 1 leave, 1 come in, and this is the difference in the benefits between the 2 staff members. Revenue, we are looking at a proposed surplus in the current budget, as well as in the budget that we proposed for FY23. The major driver in the surplus is the school board's practice of budgeting for every student at the Newport tuition rate. So all 75 or 80 of our students, we budget. Those who are out of district, we budget at the Newport rate, even though those rates are not all the Newport rate. State adequacy aid is down $13,971, and state education tax is down $45,633. So you have a net decrease in overall revenue. The budget summary. This budget is $98,146 over prior year. Non-tax revenue is $36,620 less than last year. And the estimated local tax revenue to support this budget is $135,265, which translated into a $1.15 increase over the current $7.22. So we always provide a couple of graphs. The majority of these can also be found in the town report. I know that there are some in the back of the room. If folks specifically would like this PowerPoint, please just give me your name and I'll email it out to you. We use pretty much the same graphics each year to show folks where the dollars in the budget are going. Special education, you can see at $72,600. Tuition, just under $1 million. Benefits, $121,000. Salaries, $354,000. And everything else, $183,000. and that is for K-12. We call this the bucket slide.
Can you just have that for 1 second?
Sure. And again, I'm happy to give folks copies of these slides so you have them for reference.
Is that what is the last one?
183,763.
Thank you.
This one, obviously, it's a little harder to read at this distance, but these are just all of the categories that the school board budgets for expenses in. Regular education, high school, you can see those are your major buckets, and then it goes down from there. So it's generally regular education, high school instruction, and special education that are the big drivers of your small budget. The revenue pie chart is pretty straightforward. School budgets are supported with 4 categories of revenue. The first being local. The major money in the local budget is the surplus that you might derive from the prior year. That goes to offset taxes. The state money includes adequacy aid and the SWEPT aid, or SWEPT grant, excuse me. Federal grants, which is a tiny little sliver of the pie, and the remainder of the revenue to make up your revenue budget is local taxation. This is true in every school across the state of New Hampshire. You have 4 revenue buckets. This slide I'm happy to give folks a copy of. It's a little bit harder to read. Just compares since we started your school district away from Newport, the budgeted amounts. This slide always seems to be relatively popular because this is your tax rate. Historically, these come directly from the Department of Revenue's website for each year that your tax rates are set. The red is the school portion of the total tax rate for the community. So when you get your tax bill, you have 4 areas. You have public education, you have the state grant, which is the SWEPT account, you have the county, and you have the town or village. Those 4 components make up the orange bar. The red bar is the school's portion. And again, these numbers can all be located directly on the Department of Revenue's website, the Department of Taxation. There's reports there if you want to go and verify or compare against other towns, maybe your size, or in your tax rate cohort. So you can go right there. These are all public numbers. So the bottom line on this budget, $1,705,496, is that if you own a $100,000 home, it's assessed at $100,000, you would see an increase of approximately $115. $200,000 home, approximately $230, and a $300,000 home, approximately $345.
Is that annual?
That's your annual, yeah, that's the full budget, the full expense budget against your tax, yep. And that concludes the $1,705,496 budget. At this point in time, again, this budget can't be amended in this body. The school board can listen to comments and take that into consideration, but your meeting on May 7th will be the time at which, if you meet all your thresholds, you'll be able to vote on this $1,705,000 budget and or amend it at that meeting. There won't be any amendments that would happen tonight. Yeah, so the question is to remind folks of what the requirements are for that meeting on May 7th.
Requirements in what respect? I mean,
In order to have your meeting.
okay, so there were 500 show up in order for the vote to happen.
So in addition to that, the meeting on May 7th is a ballot vote. It is not your traditional school district meeting where folks raise their hands. It will be a ballot vote. This is the first step. Tonight's budget hearing is the first step in preparing for that meeting on May 7th. The next step is we will warn the district meeting 14 days ahead of the meeting, and the school district will then also place an ad 7 days prior to that meeting on May 7th with the full warrant in the newspaper. So that will be in both the Valley News and the Eagle Times. And at this time, I will hand it over to the board to take questions. Okay.
So in hearing that, I would just like to know from each one of you, with a show of hands, do you still support this original budget that you presented back on March 12th? With a show of hands. Do you still present, do you still support?
We're
this
not
budget?
showing our hands.
Okay, well then, could each one of you speak into the microphone? Do you still support this budget that you recommended back on March 12th?
I would lean towards supporting something more along the lines of going back to last year's funding and giving us this next year to see if there are opportunities to reduce the budget, because there is a lot of voices in town that would like to see the budget reduced. I think the move that was made in this 800,000 was overly drastic. I would like to see something more along the lines of just, let's keep the funding as it was last year and see what we can do in the year ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Jody?
Yeah, and since the budget was presented and discussions have happened, I've seen a number of areas that I'd like to see it reduced at the very least.
To what amount?
I don't have that number in my head, but, you know, tuition.
So you no
Tuition
longer,
padding, for example, like we're padding for too many students, we could go down by 100,000 on that alone. So there are a couple of things like that.
okay, so you would reduce it by 100,000.
At least.
Okay,
That's one example.
okay. And Aaron?
Going into the last budget hearing, I suspected that we were paying more than we needed to for the school district here, but I didn't really have a good sense of what the alternative would be. I thought that we would have a full year to meet through the sustainability committee and other ways to talk about how we might bring the budget down. Since this $800,000 budget came about, it's forced me to do a lot more research. I'm very convinced now that we could certainly spend a lot less and still have a quality education that we're providing. So in that respect, I wouldn't still support a full $1.7 million budget. That being said, as I've mentioned in previous meetings, all of the models that I've put together for different options, I can't really get them all the way down to 800,000. So I don't necessarily think that works either. The best I've done is gotten to around 905. That's really like no wiggle room. It would be an uncomfortable budget for sure. I feel a lot more confident at $1 million or 1.1, but certainly I'm confident that we can do a lot less than 1.7. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Angie?
So when the budget was created, and I've been part of that process before, years ago when I was on board, we would go over the whole budget and then we would have to vote on it so that we could then present it to the community. Jim Pesci was on the board for a long time when I was, and he would help create the budget, but he would, for the most part, always vote against it. And Jody and I would vote for it, and so then it would move forward. I'm waiting for him to correct me. You agree with that?
Usually, yeah.
Right. So even though he was a part of it, he would still vote against it. So this question is not to Kevin, but to the two of you that were sitting on the board when this budget was created. Did you vote for it at that time?
Yeah, I did. Even though I wasn't happy with it, I could have taken the Jim Pesci approach, but I didn't. It's true.
And Aaron?
I did. No, like I said a minute ago, I suspected that we were probably paying more than we need to, but I didn't have any other better alternatives at the time.
I'd like to know from all three of you if you anticipate voting at the May 7th meeting.
Yes.
I don't see why not.
I just wanna ask, so, do you all think that we can lower the budget, down however much, with some amount? But that is not an option at this time. The option is either 800,000 or 1.7. Correct?
Is that, not really, at the district meeting, you can still lower it. You just can't do it here.
We just can't, there can't be a motion on the floor tonight to do that.
Right.
I see.
At the meeting on May 7th, anyone can put any motion on the floor to,
Okay. And so
somebody
that's-
could put a motion on the floor to reduce it to 100,000.
And so that's what that is what will be on, will be whatever number comes out, right? I just want to understand how it works.
The moderator is gonna run the meeting, just like the district meeting we had March 12th.
Okay.
He's gonna raise this one warrant that is on the agenda. It gets accepted as read, and then there's discussion. And discussion can go anywhere you want. About, you can go through line by line on the budget to see how things are actually working, you can question it, you can propose to delete lines or lower them or increase them or whatever. I mean, that's typically what happens at our district meetings. And then a number comes up at the end, and then it's either the same number or a different one, that different one would need to be voted on, and then the whole thing voted on again. That's the process.
And if, so if like, I'm sorry, I want to know too, can we do multiple, like if someone says, I want the 8,000, I can, that's been voted on, and then the other one says, I want, or the other vote is yes to 1.7, if someone then says, well, I want to lower it to what it was last year, can you do that again, or is it just once? Is it like a one-time?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, that's it. That's actually a really good question, because the special meeting has to be done by ballot, but I don't know if like each motion on the floor has to be
The
balloted
ballot will be on the warrant
on the overall,
Yes.
at the end of the discussion, that's where the ballot.
They can make a motion to amend the wording of the warrant article, and if that motion passes, then you would vote on the final wording.
But her question is if you can have multiple, so you can do it at a line item level, for sure.
Okay.
But you know the answer to the question.
I'm fairly sure that you can make an amendment to the motion to be a particular dollar amount, and then that amendment is seconded what you voted on. If that amendment passes, then that is the warrant article, and it gets revoted, but it's that new number. If that amendment does not pass, there could be another amendment, or it would default to the original warrant. So when you vote on the amendment, I believe, I guarantee you this, when you vote on the amendment, it either changes the warrant article if it's passed, or it defeats the amendment and the warrant article stands.
That's my understanding as well.
Yeah.
So at the end of all the discussion, there's basically a yes or no vote as to what has been arrived at through all of the motions and discussions. So, okay.
Who would be the responsible party for tallying up the vote at the end on May 7th?
The supervisors of the chapter. And the other town
That-
officials.
I believe that the public is
That-
welcome to observe. the voting of the
Yeah,
ballot.
that's how it can be observed.
It happens on site, and it'll happen before you leave the meeting. Yeah.
There's a process.
I've had a lot of people ask me this question, it's probably one for Beth. Can you tell us the tuition rates for each individual, the tuition rate for next year for each individual school that we're currently sending students to?
So I don't have everyone's rate yet because they're not all set. Claremont, I'm gonna give you approximations,
Yep.
is $16,000. Sunapee currently, we don't have the new rate, but Sunapee currently is 15,000 for 9 through 12 and 14.5 grades 5 through 8. Montessori is 8,700. Mount Royal is 89.95 or 75. And then Newport currently is 16,023 going to 17,800.
And that is for 5 through
That is for all grades at Newport, one tuition rate.
So to clarify, every other school that we tuition to is less expensive than our anchor school, but we have budgeted all of our kids at that higher rate, so there is a buffer in tuition.
There is a buffer in tuition, and the rate, the anchor school rate is also what you would pay Kimball Union, Hanover, and Lebanon if you had students there, because they're all at that rate or higher.
Can I just clarify that on the handout that was shared with people, the tuition rates noted for those schools, which don't include Claremont, do reflect what has been communicated to us for next year by either school board members following a vote just this week, or by administration. So that's why some of those numbers don't quite reflect what that said.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure everybody's clear too, that this handout wasn't provided by the board, so we haven't reviewed the numbers on here. For example, I don't know exactly what the 357,000 is referring to, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear on who was distributing this.
Those collectively produced by these handout facilities.
Well, that's written on here to be clear.
Sorry.
So I just wanted clarification, Jody, you said that the budget could be reduced by 100,000 based on how it's added. And I thought you were saying that in the context of what's been explained about all the kids being budgeted at the Newport rate.
Correct.
But I believe in that slideshow that that amount was slightly over $22,000.
It was.
So either you're referring to some other padding that I like explained, or that doesn't make sense.
I'm not certain. We're talking about line items. So in the tuition line items, there's an increase over prior year. So I'd have to look specifically at what you're looking at just to clarify.
I think it was the surplus due to budgeting at the Newport rate.
It was in one of your first slides, maybe the third or fourth slide, that you indicated, and I just wrote it in round numbers. $22,000 surplus due to budgeting for all of the students at the Newport rate.
Sure. Let me just take a look at it before I answer. I'll come back to it. Thank
It's
you.
not 100,000, so I'm wondering where else do you think it's padded, where Jody thinks it's padded.
That's the surplus from, they're expecting from this current year.
The entire budget,
yeah.
not just from tuition.
Oh.
The way we budgeted tuitioning, it's better to give the explanation,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, so your tuition budget, so you're looking at the year-over-year slide, prior year versus current year. It's an increase each year of that 168,000 or 148,000. That is the money that's left over that goes back to offset taxes. And we're looking at $20,000 more this coming year than over prior year. So that's a different function than the expense line. If you look at your overall expense budget, you'll see that it's up $100,000 in all categories. And the primary drivers of that are tuition. So when you go each category one at a time, you'll see the increase in those line items.
Right, so is that clear, right, so for the 53 kids that we tuition them at, we budget at Newport's rate?
I understand that.
Okay, so that's where the pattern comes in, and she was trying to nail me on a number, I don't have a number in my head, we were ballparking on that.
I can't see. Is that Tom?
Yeah.
We were wondering, we're all like, just like.
It's Friday, though.
Okay, on Friday. So I just, cutting the padding, I remember why we have that padding in there. And I think you probably do too. We didn't pad one year, and then we had 4 kids move into the district, and it completely blew up our budget, and then we had to go into a deficit, and then we had to raise taxes and tack it on to the next year. So, getting rid of that, we've worked with a budget that's like really skin and bone, and I'm not saying that we can't go through it and kind of try to find something that we should, and I want to try to meet people halfway, but we also have to be careful of that, because when we had a very bare bones budget where everything in little nickel and dimes, what happened is we ended up going into a deficit and it got tacked on and rolled on to the next year.
Right.
So I thought it was a wise move to put that padding on, and I think we all agreed that it was a really wise move
So,
to put that
and,
padding on.
and I agree with all of that, I agree. But we're padding for like 16 kids right now.
Yeah, that's much, that's.
Exactly, that's my point.
Yeah, yeah,
That was
no,
my
that
only
makes
point.
sense.
We don't have to pad for that many kids.
Yeah, true that.
Thank you.
All right.
Right.
Thank you, I don't know, I think you're probably deaf, because you have the numbers. I appreciate that the budget is big for Newport, because it's the top of what you would take. But I had trouble seeing, and wrong glasses on today, could you tell me exactly either the percentage or how many of children in the district are going to other schools other than Newport, just so you
Sure.
know here?
Sure, so, we have one student, this is, based on, next year, this is our projection. One student at Kimball Union, 11 students at Sunapee, 20 at Newport, 16 at Montessori, 2 at Mount Royal, and 2 at Claremont.
Thank you.
So this is a question for Beth, and I hope you have I think it was on one of the slides, but again, I didn't have my glasses like she did. Can you tell me for the last 5 years, we're going back to 2018, so can you tell me what the operating budget was for the entire school budget in 2018?
If you give me 1 minute.
Okay, so what I'm looking for, and because I'm very simple-minded, like, I would like to know what it was in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 22, and then what our proposed budget was, just so, because none of us want our taxes to, like, you know, go absolutely out of control, but I'm expecting that my taxes go up a little bit. But I think that for me, it'll be very helpful to just know that information, like what was it in 2018? You know, what did it cost? Because there are people constantly coming and going. I think it would be like really simple for people to digest.
Yeah, so let me start with, these are gonna be the actual numbers. I would have to go back to the warrant to get the, what was voted on, but let me just start with the actuals.
Okay.
So 17-18 was 1,362,925.
Okay.
18-19 was 1,403,065. 19-20 was 1,608,004. I'm gonna go to another spreadsheet just to get the actual ones. Okay. 19-20, did I just give you that one? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay, 2021. The approved budget was 1,525,251.
Can we get the actual number, so we're.
Yeah, what was the
Yeah.
actual one? Just to keep it apples and apples.
Sorry about it, it takes a minute, they're all
No,
in
that's
different,
okay.
they're in different realms.
We've got great internet if you're looking it up online.
I'm actually not. I'm not.
Requirements has to have high-speed internet, so I see that happening here.
Sometimes computers are a little slower. All right. 2021 actual 1,608,004.
1, 638.
Repeat that one?
1601 through 638, and folks, you can see all these numbers in your town report. They don't go quite far as back as 16, 17, but we're happy to provide those. If you need more information, just please reach out. And the current budget, 21-22. $1,607,350.
Okay, so it's pretty safe to say, I mean, I rounded, you know, 1.4, 1.4, 1.6, 1.6, 1.6. This year, I'm sorry, which one did you round up to 1.5? Well, regardless, I mean,
Yeah, that's fine.
it's, I mean, 1 point,
She rounded down. Actually, it was rounded down. One of the 1.6s you have was 1.5.
so
That's
I
all.
overestimated?
Yeah.
Okay. And this year's proposed budget was 1.7. I'm not exactly sure how many of you people are new to the town, like, did you just move in? Or, you know, you leave from experience, you know, do you have new neighbors? Like, there's a lot of people who have moved into town with kids because of the school choice. So the fact that the proposed budget is 1.7, to me, you know, when you look at those numbers, it is not, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what was involved when somebody just threw out the 800,000, but do you have anything in your reports that show the last time the town of Croydon operated on an $800,000 budget for the school?
I do not. I would have to go back to Newport's records, probably 20 years, maybe.
30.
Sorry, 30.
Okay, thank you.
The number of students we've had, that's been about the same, hasn't it? But the amount has gone up quite significantly in this time. And then the question is why, right?
So there's always a couple of factors, and you have to look into each budget to see why things have gone up. It can be where students are going to school, it can be your tuition rate, it can be special education costs. There's always different factors in each budget for why the school board has approved a budget at a budget hearing after the administration has presented it.
If looking at the proposed tuition rate for the other schools, such as Centipede, it's only gonna be 15,000 versus 17 going on 18,000 in Newport. What is involved in switching to Centipede as a primary receiving school? And would they take our students?
Right, so Sunapee would not guarantee that they would take all our students, but, I mean, we can set our budget, our tuition rate, I mean, it should be based on a school. I mean, we called Newport an anchor school, we made up that name, right? And Newport did agree to take everybody, but we could find other models to make sure that everybody has access to a free public education, right? And go with Sunapee.
So for
Yes.
example, you could say Centipede's going to be our anchor school at 15,000, whatever it
We
is.
can just base our tuition on that.
Yes, tuition on that, and then the parents would have to make up any difference beyond that for whatever school they select.
Correct. Yeah. Jim?
The status quo died on March 12th. Some of you haven't figured this out yet, so the town has endured a nonstop temper tantrum for almost a month. But this is a budget hearing, so let's talk about the budget. As far as I can tell from everything that's been going on, 3 basic complaints seem to emerge regarding the $800,000 budget. Number 1, it will cause a spike in taxes. 2, it will ruin education in Croydon. And 3, the people don't want it. Where have I heard these complaints before? Well, that's right. Those very same people making these complaints now made the same complaints a few years ago regarding school choice. On the top of the school choice, we have the benefit of hindsight. So how did those predictions pan out? Well, school choice has saved the town money. Wrong on the taxes plan. Students have better educational options than ever before. Wrong on the education plan. School choice dominates the district. It's very popular. So wrong on the popularity plan. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Do you see a pattern here? I asked the voters to consider the total lack of credibility of these recycled claims and those who traffic in them. But let's look at the detail. Traveling door to door, telling people that the only way to prevent a spike in property taxes is to vote for a 113% school tax increase is absurd. It goes beyond political truth-bending. It's an insult to our intelligence. Still, if there's anybody left who believes that this budget increase will lower your taxes, please see me after the meeting. I have some beautiful oceanfront land in Nebraska you might be interested in. As to educational quality, micro schools are generally well received where they're used. Their business model depends on this. They are state certified, just like the overpriced public schools we use today. And let's not get too high and mighty about the status quo. We are not starting at the top of Mount Olympus on our educational quality now. Some of our tuition schools rank dead last in educational outcomes in the state of New Hampshire. CBS test scores are nothing to write home about either. We have every reason to believe at this point that individualized microschools offer superior education to what we have today. My favorite claim is that the lower budget will also be unpopular. And good luck with that one. I'd love to be a fly on the wall during the next door-to-door campaign. Not. Sorry to disturb your enjoyment of your property tax windfall, but could I interest you in signing a petition to give back the thousands you'll save every year in return for some educational benefits we haven't thought of yet? With your signature, we can guarantee snowshoes and violence for every student. The slamming of doors in faces will be deafening. So again, history repeats itself. Claims of doom and destruction were wrong then, and they're wrong now. I call on all the voters of Croydon to stay home on May 7th. Not let this absurd budget pass. We can all find better things to do. I'm going turkey hunting. My only ambition is to bag a turkey, not $900,000 of my neighbor's money.
Is sarcasm
So
saying
who hired the clown?
Why didn't you mention Arizona? Oh, that's where Prenda's under investigation. That's right. I forgot.
Hi, I'm Chris. My son's a kindergartner. I'm also a part-time school. I believe in arts as a way to build up the social emotional strength of children.
I'm having a really hard time hearing.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify who I am. I was telling Jim in case he doesn't know, and the violins and the snowshoes were grant funded. And so I just feel that that's not a fair thing to include in your statement.
Except that it was also pointed out that the grant could have gone to general fund. That was specifically asked for the town meeting, so the money was wasted.
You are wasted?
So you think children are a waste?
All right, so one person at a time.
So, could you clarify in the discussion before Jim spoke, if the or if the tuition were changed to be based on Sunapee 15,000-ish, but Sunapee will not guarantee to take all our students. So I'm not clear how that makes a free public education to the high school students who can't go to Sunapee, whose parents would then have to pay a greater amount for them to go to Newport. If the parents have to pay beyond their taxes, that is not free.
It wouldn't necessarily have to be Newport, there could be other options, right?
So that's not school choice then?
Correct. That is correct.
But when you do your budget, are you budgeting 53 kids, is that right? That go to school on 17,000 at Newport Charters?
It's the Newport rate, yeah.
Okay, but can you adjust that a little bit, knowing that half of those kids go in different places that cost a lot less?
That's what we've been
And
talking
still
about.
gives a choice of all kids, Newport or not, but it seems to me you should be able to still reduce it by 20, 30,000.
That's the overall budget. She's asking about the actual,
Question, how do you, how the house is board, they just take 53 students, they think they're going to whatever school, and say, okay, we need $18,000 for each one, no matter where they go.
we budget the full amount for all the kids, which is too much, is what we're realizing.
No, that's what I'm questioning. Are you guessing, are you structuring, we have 53 kids that are going to optional schools. Are you guessing that they're all at 18,000, is that what Newport charges?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're making sure we can cover it.
And
in
saying-
the budget. Yeah.
Saying it's too much is an opinion, by the way. I just want that pointed out.
Looks like Beth's had her hand up for a while, or.
A lot of people have had their hands up, thank you, Connie.
Well, I just looked around and I missed Annie, so I'm
Yeah.
trying to move things along.
I just have a question on this, the anchor school thing. So even if you change the amount of money and you change your anchor school, and doesn't it, I could be wrong, but I thought the reason you guys went with Newport was because they would guarantee to take all the children. Two, if that's wherever our anchor school is, are we not legally responsible for transportation to that anchor school? I'm looking at the fact of 6.5 miles down the road to, how many you get to Sunapee? And God forbid they take some of those back roads. So they're gonna have to go the long way around to be safe.
So
Is this true or no?
We are required to provide transportation through 8th grade to some assigned school. That's correct. That's correct. Angela?
And I would just add that all of the models that we put together for different options, we did leave the full transportation budget in.
And if we had a micro school that could suffice that for giving everybody the opportunity for a free adequate education, then that would be one way to solve that. Every kid would have that option. I mean, you don't have the option for every school. I mean, it's not like free school choice. In fact, the board gets to decide what schools go on the list that the parents get to choose from. There are many towns that exclude many schools from being on their town tuitioning program. And one thing we could consider is academic achievement of the schools, and that's something, I mean, because it's getting quite wide, but that means that we have to manage many different contracts and so on. I think there's a lot of overhead that goes with that.
So, we have school choice, and you're stating if we did a micro school, that would be our anchor school? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, it would be the choice for everybody, yeah?
So
That would be the 8th grade choice that everybody would have access to.
What other choices would people have for 8th grade education other than a micro school?
We have to provide one option. That's why we can give a cap on the tuition, right?
School choice, so they get to choose a free option.
We have town tuition.
Right, but we have this school choice, so we have to have more than one free choice other than a micro school. So how many places use a micro school as their free, ugly, how many?
I don't know the answer to that. These are gonna be questions that you can ask when they come to talk to you.
I don't believe that there are
And it's,
I don't believe there are any towns that use a micro school as their primary education model without a public school. That's what I'm asking.
The micro school model would be how you are guaranteeing everybody has an option. I would clarify again that these micro schools, you actually get your choice of the many schools. The micro school is just a physical location where the children can be together, and then they're selecting any number from any number of online curriculums.
They're choosing, I looked at it, they're choosing a curriculum, they're not choosing multiple schools. So if we have a micro school, our kids cannot go to Newport to play sports. Listed as a micro school. If they were homeschooled, they could. But they cannot if they're enlisted in a micro school. Or they cannot go to any after-school programs that are offered in the areas or any of that
If
stuff.
you're talking about grades 5 and up, they would be enrolled at a school in the micro school model. It would be
Right.
an online school, and there's several of them that are available, wide array of curricula, Montessori being one. others being, you know, more traditional options as others. The micro school is just something you're putting on top of the online curriculum so that they have a place to do it with other kids, with an adult in the room. So there are choices here that we're introducing.
That's not a public normal, that's not a normal public assembly, no.
It's a different way of
It
thinking
is
about it.
a different way to do
That's
it.
good.
Is this trying to private?
Free state project.
Yes, yeah, it's for profit.
They need money.
Okay, so wait, can I ask one more question?
That's why.
So, say we got stuck with this 800,000, you bring this pregnant, that means this school over here has to completely close, correct?
No, that's where it would be.
No, the front.
Wait a minute. Isn't the school run by the town? Doesn't the town operate the school?
The district
The
operates.
district does. So your private profiting company can come right in and take over the school?
So there would be administration, that would be our administration.
Correct.
And it would be running that school, that would be part of it, the SAU office would be there, there would be, it would be a district school. Using a private curriculum, so, excuse me, we use a lot of private curriculum in the school, all the textbook companies are for-profit companies, we use their curriculum. Do we not?
Our teachers are not for profit, thank you.
That's, neither, no.
I'm pretty sure they'd stop coming if we stopped paying.
That's kind of, they're not working. Really, I'm sorry, what was that, Kevin?
I'm pretty sure our teachers would stop coming if we stopped paying.
Yes, they would, that's kind of, and obviously that's you guys'
Everybody works for profit. I'm not saying that all of the arguments are completely invalidated, but the whole idea of for-profit being a terrible idea. Everybody works for profit. I'm just pointing that one small detail out.
Yeah, but teachers don't make anything, and we do it because we love